bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on Sirius XM FC.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to USL All Access, wherever you may be. Joined by Devon Kerr and Evan McConnell at the controls. Mike Watts taking back the power of co-hosting this show from the A chair. Ton to talk about from the week that was. We may have just had the game of the season in the championship. Some would say that could have been the game of the century thus far in the championship. We'll break down Louisville and Sacramento. We've got some major league news to talk about, as well as a whole rash of transactions as well. Devon, all hail the king, I'm back, baby.
I was just about to ask on your lead-in, if you're taking back the A chair, does that mean I only ever operated from the B chair and I got to sit in your chair? Or are you just taking it back and I was never actually in said chair? I was just all by my lonesome.
I view us as two A's. I just recognize that, in a play-by-play analyst relationship, someone's got to get us into the show and someone's got to take us out. Which is me saying, I brought you into this world, Devon, and I can take you out. Yeah, all of a sudden you sound like my mother and Casey at the same point in time, and you're AAA and I'm single A, and I'm trying to find a way just to exist. It was an interesting world without you, and while I did enjoy sitting in said chair, it was awkward. It was different, and I felt a little bit lonely, to be honest, mostly because when I sat in your chair, I couldn't see down at Joe Malfa's level. Yes, that is a short joke, and yes, he will eventually hear that and acknowledge the fact that even when he's not here, he will continue to catch strays. We came up with a Halloween costume, by the way. Need to talk to you about that when I see him in person. I'm looking forward to it. So this is just my second show in the last 5 weeks. I know we spoke about it seemingly ad nauseum. Hopefully the airline that's headquartered in Atlanta, I'm trying not to get in too much trouble here in terms of legality. It could be anyone. Headquartered in Atlanta with hubs in Detroit, New York, Minneapolis, New York, and Salt Lake City. But I don't want to be specific. It's been, to say it lightly, a hit and miss endeavor. Attempting to be on the ground and in the air at the times I'm supposed to be both on the ground and in the air. And so Devon and our appreciation, mine specifically to Joe, for stepping up to the plate as always, just sort of managing the last couple of weeks. But hopefully we get a little bit of predictability here moving forward. Dev, you had the chance to call, I would say, the game of the year. I was off in NFL preseason land. Let's start with Sacramento and Louisville City. You're talking about, Louisville at this stage going back to back to back. New Mexico, Sacramento, Charleston. I don't think there's, including having to go to New Mexico, a more difficult 3-game stretch in the league this year than going West 1, West 2, East 1 against East 1. And then you get the 1-2 matchup this week between Louisville and Charleston. Nutty. Sacramento unbeaten in 11 games on the road, going for history. Louisville trying to sell the joint out. Ironically, kids' night moved to 9 p.m. because of the TV scheduling. ESPN2, so the spotlight's huge. And Devin, it totally lived up to it. It really did. Incredible match from start to finish that had everything. It was, the star-studded cast for sure, names galore for both teams, albeit understanding that, yes, shorthanded for both in some areas. That's also a testament to the quality of the league and the quality of these two organizations to be able to establish such incredible depth. The tactical changes that were throughout the match, Louisville's aggression coming up high. Danny Cruz very clear about the fact that they wanted intensity to be about everything, but with that intensity, they couldn't overexpose themselves. Basically, that when they went vertical and they went fast, they had to move together. That actually got them in trouble a couple of times within the match. Certainly Republic and their 3 goals unanswered for a decent amount of time at the start of the second half. Louisville controlled a lot. Sac had good responses.
it's kind of one of those ones going back, Mike, where we're going to look at moments and say what could have been for one compared to the other. Those moments more aplenty for Louisville overall. Though I would say in the first half, their opportunities weren't that great. Like they didn't really test Danny Vitiello outside of the opening goal 10 minutes in. There wasn't much more within it. The XG proved it was below 0.5. I like to look at the XG numbers when I'm on a game and I can feel all of it and go, yeah, that makes sense to me. And it did. Because sometimes it doesn't. And all of a sudden, I remember Joe Malfa, who was calling the game for play-by-play, looked up about 60 minutes in. He said the XG was like, or 70 minutes in, it said the XG was like 1.4, and yet we had 6 goals within the match, right?
Right.
So, game of the year, absolutely. It's hard to go back and say anything was really bad. You know, a couple of us production-wise were talking about this after the match. You and I do this too, is, oh, that was a bad move there. There was bad defending here. You know, I can say that on the sack goal, the opening goal, their set piece, that was bad defending by Louisville. No one went out to help Ray Serrano. And I would say that outside of that, it's very difficult for me to really pick out any other specific moments, certainly on the goals, where you could say things got it wrong. Someone reached out to me on Twitter via DM, and Joe Malfa actually brought this up as well. So two minds thinking one way, but I disagreed. They said that, you know, defensively, Connor Donovan could have done better on the opening goal, and I disagreed with that, and here's why. Again, being nitpicky, that aggression by Louisville that opened themselves up also kept space open so that on their first goal, when they went, the midfield was void for Sacramento Republic. So that was wrong. Positionally, they got pulled and they had their marks. There was just so much space centrally. So when Wilson Harris came high and wide, as a defender and a center back, all you're looking to do is give yourself an opportunity positionally so that as you're turning yourself to push Wilson Harris one way, you still have the ability to get your hips around, hopefully coming across your body as opposed to spinning away from the field of play and maintaining momentum. It's one of the hardest things to do as a defender. That's also just a quality that Wilson Harris brought in that moment, obviously over the course of the season in his 14 goals, but in that moment, because like that, getting pulled one way, the cut back across, and then he moved Danny Vitiello for a second, and then in the bottom corner, Vitiello knew that he cheated too much and he got beat. But it was just one of those games. It was so much fun to call, man. It was a mess.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not so sure. Have you seen the call at the end of the match that created controversy that everybody's talked about?
Let's talk about that. And ultimately, the outcome is a drop ball. Niall McCabe takes it on the half volley, places it across the face of goal. Wilson Harris off a back heel from Sean Tosh puts in the winner in the 94th minute, 4th minute of 4 minutes of stoppage time. And Louisville, in essence, walks it off 4-3. Walk us through what happened with this, because, look, I actually had to go back and rewatch that portion of the game because I saw it as a highlight, and I was in Cincinnati. I had an NFL preseason game, so that's why we weren't together for this. I'd already made it to a post-game event.
Mind and spirit still linked.
No
Keep
doubt.
going.
And I'm watching this with all these people around going, what is happening? Who does a drop ball at the end line?
Okay, so let's start there. And this is where it gets really interesting to me. The drop ball, oddly enough, at the end of this is the correct decision. However, there are about 20 mistakes leading up to it that got them to that position. So let's backtrack here for a second. There is a coming to in the middle of the field that has Sebastian Herrera against Aiden McFadden. I believe the secondary player was, I think it was Justin Portillo. Either way, 2 sack players, 1 Louisville player, ball goes vertical, they come up. The referee issues the play on stance. Okay, so in that situation, he is acknowledging that a foul did occur, but for Louisville in this instance, he's allowing them to play on. Number one, right then and there, talked to multiple referees on it. It wasn't a foul to begin with. So let's start there. The momentum itself, I even said this on air, I don't know as to whether or not, and this is the funny part, I don't know as to whether or not McFadden would have collided with said Sacramento player no matter what. To me, that would have been the foul. Found out through my ways that apparently the foul would have been on Sebastian Herrera. If you go back and look at it, I think it's very loose. He's certainly in from behind. There is a little bit of a nudge, but to me, there's not enough. The referees that I've spoken to have also said they wouldn't have blown a foul. So there's number one. Number two, as a referee, if you've issued play on, now you have to go, right? The problem in that is the reason that he doesn't let that play conclude is because he said that it was a head injury. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, okay, this is a foul, I'm going to let it play on, and the ball's almost going to get over the end line, but oh, by the way, well, that's a head injury, so now we're going to stop.
We need to stop play, right?
Exactly. This is really simple. Head injury, blow the whistle, done. Whether it's a foul or not, that's the most important thing. If you think there's a head injury, you blow the play dead. Forget the fact that you're giving advantage. The fact that you then, hang on real quick, the fact that you acknowledge that there should have been a foul and let it go, then you have to let it go. Then the ball goes over the end line. And that's what Louisville's argument was. Now, they get a drop ball. Niall McCabe, next level IQ on the move. Shantosh, we'll get to the end of that in a second. But as soon as you've committed as a referee, although wrong, as soon as you've committed to playing on, you have to see that out.
Right.
So that's why I said at the end of this, the linesman actually came back over. He stops the game, and the referee, they're going back and forth. And the conversation was, okay, all of that is wrong, but here's the thing. You blew play dead with a live ball. There's possession of sorts, but it's a live ball. Advantage clearly Louisville. Ball was going to go over the end line for a corner, but a live ball nonetheless. You have to give a drop ball. So at the beginning of this, I stated that is the correct decision at the end of everything. It's a diabolical mess of a decision, one after another, that got everyone into that position. But the drop ball at the tail end of everything is correct.
Yeah, so I want to bring you back to the head injury because this is one thing that I've seen it done both ways. And I don't know what the actual rule is within IFAB as it relates to head injuries. If there is an advantage to be had, right, breakaway, head injury is at midfield, are you still required to stop play instantly, or is it when play comes back into that area of the field?
The way that it has been explained to me by pro referees is that if a head injury occurs, that is it.
And that's my understanding as well.
Much like what we experienced, I don't know if you remember this controversy. I think it was San Diego Phoenix a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Much like when the ball hits a referee. I'm not comparing the ball hitting the referee and a head injury is the same thing. I'm comparing situations in that
it is a dead ball in that
moment. It is a dead ball. Right then and there, dead ball, drop ball, we are done.
Right.
That's the way it's been explained to me. That's the way I interpret it. Any situation prior to this match, that's how it's played out.
Right. And in this particular instance, it was allowed to play through, and we will come back and look at the injury later, which calls into question which, to your point, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. Now the play itself, by the way, I
saw your stats about Tosh's.
The Tosh thing is crazy. We'll get there in a second, but I want to start with the drop ball because I'm not sure. And this is something that I wish I would have been proactive. I have no life right now. I'm exhausted and surviving on caffeine, and that's about it right now. No sleep and tons of games. Very good problem to have. I wish I would have been more proactive and reached out to Sean Tosh or Danny Cruz or someone and seen in that moment where they were checking the head injury and the referees, credit to them on the back end. Again, I know it's a rough decision, but they were communicating as to what the appropriate decision was. I want to know what the conversation was between Louisville and what they were going to do, because that ball by Niall McCabe, incredibly taken. I don't know many a player that would have, in that situation, given all the emotion and the tie game, that would have tried to one-hop it back in. Most people would have turned and tried to come back and then hit one into the box, because in theory, you're going to get a better look at it, right? You can control the ball, set up a ball back, and let one of your wingers, let one of your ball strikers in general whip it into the box. Niall McCabe, on the one-hop, puts in this incredible ball. A little surprised Vitiello didn't come out, but with the stature of players and everyone in front of him, I recognize the hesitancy. I don't know how it is ever allowed to drop in the box. To me, that's an organizational issue for Sac in the moment. So all the credit to Louisville in setting it up, Sac not being ready to play. And then, dear Lord, Sean Tosh, man, I got to tell you, buddy, that is one of the most unselfish moves that I've seen by any player, given the circumstance, the emotion, what was at play, the score line in my time in USL Championship, Watts. Because the way the ball pops out, most players are just going to turn and try and hit it. And instead, everybody knowing that, the goalkeeper included, they're all tracking the ball. Tosh with this clever little back heel to set up Wilson Harris for his 14th of the year, second of the night, and to seal 3 points. I know people are probably wondering why we're talking at length about this game. I don't know, to your point leading in terms of scheduled congestion, if we've ever seen this level of difficulty when it comes to multiple games in a row. First in the West, second in the West, and now they're going to have to play first in the West against the Charleston Battery. We've got a fun conversation about that. Missed you on the call for sure. Missed you on the game. Everybody that had the opportunity to be there or watch it, kudos. And if you haven't, I'm going to go back myself again and just enjoy the match because it had everything. It was awesome.
Yeah, here's what Devon tweeted after the fact. Sean Tosh has played 308 games in his pro career. That was his 7th assist, a back heel inside the 6 to Wilson Harris, his 37th goal contribution overall. And as Devon writes on social afterwards, might be the most important of his USL Championship tenure when all is said and done. So it finishes 4-3 to Louisville City. They led 2-0, concede 3 in a row, ultimately come back, win it 4-3 on home ground. It puts Louisville back in position in the Eastern Conference, a point ahead, 2 games in hand over Charleston. For Sacramento, that moves them now 6 points off the pace, and New Mexico has the game in hand on them out west. It leaves them in a tie with Oakland for third, although I think we can all agree right now it feels on its face like a 2-horse Western Conference race. Dev, couple other things we want to hit on before we head off to break here at the outset. A ton of transaction news. We're at that time now, right? Rita Zuhair coming back to the league certainly raised a couple eyebrows given that he's not going where we maybe thought. He's headed to Birmingham. Danny Stone is the new assistant coach to Orange County, which sees him join Paul Hardiman as his lead assistant. Las Vegas is probably where we stop off next year. Undefeated now in 11. They've been making some adds to their roster over the last 3 weeks. Don't look now, right? In the past, whenever they had a shred of success, you always went, well, that's cute. That was a really nice couple of weeks.
It's so perfectly put, by the way.
Between I'm trying to find the best way to put it.
I'll say it this way.
BS.
All the white noise. The only
Yeah.
time any of this ever felt real was with Eric Winalda, and even he didn't get anywhere near what they're doing right now.
He didn't have a chance.
Respectfully. And agreed. Yeah, we all thought he should stay there. He didn't get the chance.
No. And so here we are with Las Vegas on 11. If you want to walk through the change that they've just made and what they're doing, because goodness gracious, it is, for the first time, Las Vegas looks like a genuine threat.
They look like a genuine threat at every level. And that's the most important thing to me, because Brett Lashbrook put them on the map. He brought them into the USL Championship, and respectfully, that's kind of it. And the reason I praise it that way is it was never about what was on the field. It was never about the identity for this team, whereas now that's everything. It's an owner and Jose Bautista that wants to do it the right way, that has transformed the stadium and the field to accommodate what a footballing team should look like playing the game the right way. I don't mean the right way for everyone. I mean the right way in people's eyes of ball on the deck, movement, lots of touches, and really challenging you mentally. They've gone young when it comes to talent. They've got guys that are willing to push themselves to try and get to another level technically, to try and chase things in USL Championship. You know, I think we talked about Sean Smart before. He's one of those guys that, with the evolution of MLS Super Draft and guys being allowed, we'll say, to be drafted earlier, sophomores, juniors, and seniors now. Players are now going to have the opportunity, in a good way, to challenge MLS teams about their worth. Sean Smart is one of those guys, the guys who, as the year went on in Clemson, got better and better and better, scored a couple of goals, namely one en route to a national championship with Clemson in the College Cup, and his stock rose. He ends up in Vegas. I think it's incredible. And they were smart in their scouting. So you've got a good owner, you've got a good head coach, you've got players who are willing to chase it. And a guy like Valentin Noel, again, I could name a bunch of different players, but they now have success at every single level. They have a true identity that is a football club first and foremost. And then if they can add layers to it around it, success will only follow. 11 games unbeaten now, ties the longest undefeated streak of this season. Charleston Battery and Sacramento Republic started the year 11 games unbeaten. That was, by the way, tied for the 6th longest in USL Championship history. That's to start a year. We've seen multiple teams go double digits over the year, go unbeaten. But incredible turnaround. And as many jokes have we've shared over the year, Mike, I love the fact that we can have a real discussion about how threatening this team could be long-term. To me, this is just an initial start of the success of what could be in the future, an organization to continue to make steps and rise up the rankings, not just in the Western Conference, but in terms of conversation around the USL Championship landscape.
No doubt. Congrats to the Lights, 11 unbeaten. All right, when we come back, we're going to chat a little bit about the Louisville-Charleston showdown, including just how substantial a game it is for a USL Championship regular season, August performance. How are we talking about one of the great games in league history? We'll chat about it on the other side of the break here on USL All Access.
Let's get back to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everyone. USL All Access on this Tuesday evening, joined by Devon and Emmett at the controls. Mike, miss any part of the show? It's available on the Sirius XM app, also on YouTube as well, with our faces. I'm live from Cleveland, chilling in the old childhood bedroom. This is what a day and a half off looks like. Me taping a show alongside a polka dot doggy. Devon, as always, is well set up in Florida. Meanwhile, the Oakland Roots are well set up for next year. Much talk about everything that's gone on in pro sports in Oakland. The Coliseum was set to be vacated by the A's. They're moving, ironically, to Sacramento and then maybe to Las Vegas at some point. What we know now is that the Roots are moving to the Oakland Coliseum for 2025. We hinted while Joe Biden was announcing he wouldn't run for president again on CBSSports.com instead of CBS that was coming, and now the news has arrived. The other major news, Devon, breaking today, we knew this probably a few weeks back. Lexington are moving up to the championship. They'll do so alongside a First Division women's team in Super League as they open up their new stadium. You and I obviously have known Sam Stockley a long time. Darren Powell is the former coach at San Antonio, spent a lot of time down in Florida. After that fact, it is an organization that's primed for that moment, no doubt.
It's about the stadium for sure, the overall setup and what could be for Lexington in the future. The way I say that is because of foundation. And you know what an advocate I am for making sure that when you come in to a league, regardless of level, that you have all of those pieces, and Lexington SC will have that. You've got a sporting director and Sam Stockley that certainly has the experience on the coaching side, but more importantly, recognizing the pieces behind the scenes in order to find success. Darren Powell, someone that at MLS within USL Championship as a head coach previously at San Antonio FC, averaging over 1.5 points per game, by the way, during his tenure there. Not too shabby prior to Alan Marcina. He found success in his own right, including that great 2017 team that finished second in the Players' Shield race. Also at the youth level for Stockley, the youth level for Darren Powell, and now the youth level for Lexington, because they've already got a quality academy and starting to churn out some products. And the other two have been a part of some really special players around this country. One that I would add for a young man like Benjamin Kremoski, who through, I know it's MLS and I know it's Inter Miami, but Darren Powell recognized him at Weston. They got him into that organization. Darren was part of director of player development prior to his time moving into the first team, subsequently taking over as the head coach of Inter Miami 2 and now Lexington SC. They all recognize all of the levels that need to be there. Those pillars of success have found it before and have no doubt together can find it again.
All right, so welcome Lexington. They're on their way, and I think we've got a really good upcoming rivalry between Louisville and Lexington.
By the way, I forgot to add on the backside of that, speaking of upcoming good rivalries, they've also got Cameron Lancaster in the 9, the third all-time scorer in USL Championship history with 80 goals. And yeah, why not? Forget Open Cup, man. Let's get that week 1, those two versus each other.
Yeah, that's almost why I brought it up. All right. Good. Yeah, teamwork. All right, let's chat about what Jeff Milby put out. He does radio for Louisville City. He opines on Twitter, is Saturday's Louisville City Charleston Battery matchup the biggest regular season game in USL Championship history? You and I have been going back and forth on this a little bit. Let's start with this. The game is 8 p.m. Eastern, Saturday night on the 17th on ESPN+. He makes these points. It's 1 versus 2, not just in the East. Currently in the Players' Shield, they're 1 point apart. Eastern Conference final rematch that went all the way to the wire last year. You could say between Ben Pierman and Danny Cruz. While I imagine there's no love lost, 2 brightest young coaches perhaps in the league. Top 2 goal scorers, Marcanic and Wilson Harris. And they're trying to fill the FAM, which means at least 10,000 tickets are out. They could get 15,000. Dev, at first you go, hey, it's mid-August. Let's slow our roll a little bit. Yeah, both teams have played really well, but the longer I keep thinking about this, I can't think of one time where it is a potential runaway from the top 2. They meet at this point in the year in a 6-pointer that could decide the first piece of silverware of the year. And they hate each other. They don't like each other. Rematch of a playoff game. Low key, this might be it. It really might.
Not just the first piece of silverware for the year, but the first Player Shield for either organization. Friendly reminder that Louisville City have never won the Player Shield. They've been the one in the East, but they've never won the number 1 overall seed. Neither have Charleston Battery in the modern era, which is 2011 until now. The 1 point separation, the game's in hand. I'm with you. I kind of joked it off, right? No, this isn't possible. And then I started thinking about it a little bit deeper, and I was like, okay, yeah, it actually makes a little bit of sense. Their strength of schedule down the stretch, very similar. They've got San Antonio, they've got the Rowdies. I'm not saying that in terms of quality opponent. I'm saying who they play. Certainly the Rowdies is going to be the next main talking point, who are sitting there at 3rd. I don't know as to whether or not this game is going to decide the title, but it damn well could. It is that close of a margin between these two. Danny Cruz, very clear about the fact that he didn't set goals for the team this year. They talked about culture. They've adjusted it, and now they want that number 1. They want the Players' Shield, and I promise you, Ben Pierman, Charleston Battery, all the conversations I've had with them and Lee Cohen, they are right there in that conversation as well. So while maybe I turned my head away at first, going through it, it's probably got my vote. Well done, Jeff Milby.
Yep. Real quick, think about it this way. When we talk 6-point game, we're going to walk out of that. Let's say we do get a winner. So we very well could get a draw. If we get a winner, it's either Louisville up 4 points with 2 games in hand with 10 games to go, or it's Charleston 2 points ahead, Louisville 2 games in hand. That's where we're going to leave the night. Or we get a draw and it finishes on that 1 point difference in the 2 games. But either way, we're at the point now where you start falling behind 4, 6, 7 points in the next 2 weeks. You need the other team to hit multiple banana peels down the stretch.
And you're playing the same person, so who's going to flinch in the next 90 minutes?
No doubt. All right, when we come back, we've got a ton more in the show, including a look back at all the results of the week that was. It's coming your way here on SiriusXM FC after this.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everyone, to USL All Access. This week, joined by a great guest. We've had the chance to talk to him a bit off air, but for the first time, we get a chance to introduce him to a little bit more of the USL audience here on Sirius. named the head coach for Las Vegas Lights back on January 29th. Dennis Sanchez has now got the Lights on an 11-game unbeaten run. We talked about it earlier in the show. Sees them into a tie for fourth place on points in the Western Conference. That is quite literally the high water mark in the history of the club. Time in Sacramento, came from Austin, and joins us now on the show. Dennis, welcome, and excited to have you on the show. I know we've had a chance to speak a few times throughout the year, but always appreciate your insight and glad you could jump on with us.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on, and excited to catch up.
No doubt. You know, I was thinking about the undertaking that you took on here, and I remember talking to the ownership in Phoenix when they took over from the Arizona United group, built a new stadium. They called it Tumbleweeds to Rough and Tumble in 40 days. And I imagine that resonates a little bit. What made it clear to you when you were chasing this job that like this was going to be different, that the new Vegas ownership was going to give you a chance to lead a genuinely competitive USL team in Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, when I go back to the hiring process, my first conversation with Jose, we just really connected and really with this sense of alignment when it came to not winning in 3 or 4 years, but winning now. And you could tell that, Jose being an ex-baseball player who played at a very high level, still has the competitive juices flowing. And, you just felt that sense of alignment right away with, really trying to turn this thing around. And I think what also attracted me was, coming in with a blank slate. I've always been attracted to working with high quality people first, which you have in Jose, but then also just projects in general in terms of, coming in with a blank roster and really being able to create something that you want. There was no doubt some sleepless nights early on. We had about 3 weeks to put a team together for preseason. But with that, I think that, in a weird way, we were all meant to be here together at this time. And, you've had guys coming from really all different, aspects in terms of their career. But we want to be intentional with how we built the roster and building a winning culture right away. And to have that blank slate again was a really unique opportunity to have and to take on.
You get announced on January 29th. They say go. What's the first thing you do?
See who's available. No, it was, look, I've been, on my own, coaching journey for quite some time now, and have really, been fortunate to work under some great mentors and great organizations. I think, all the while, I've been a head coach, especially at an academy level, but, you develop your philosophy, you develop your methodology, and I have a pretty clear idea of the type of people that I want first and the type of players that I'm looking for. So, for me, it was really more of just like, starting to kind of chip away at it and looking at it as a puzzle. And every time you add a player, it's how does that balance out with the rest of the group? And we wanted to really ensure that we brought in, different type of profile and characteristics that could really fit into one unified group, and really give us the identity that we were looking for.
Dennis, within that background, you talk about that expansive journey so far, right? With Austin 2 and MLS Next Pro, obviously with Sacramento Republic. Prior to that, 2 years as the academy manager, actually took over from Mark Briggs when he went to the first team to take over from Simon Elliott. 3 seasons as the Crew Academy general manager. That, if I'm doing math correctly, which if you don't know about me, numbers and I do not add well together, that would have been part of both the Caleb Porter and Greg Berhalter era, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
Two together. Then prior to that, for people that don't know, you spent some time in England with the Everton youth program, U14s to the U18s, and you were with San Diego State prior to that here in the States. Obviously, that your personal ties to that program and your playing days. I guess where I'm going with that is that encompasses a lot. And while that certainly gives you an idea of what you want to be, that finite timeline didn't give you a lot of chance, in my opinion, just because of the time, to really chase everything that you wanted. So how did that window of opportunity, as small as it was, maybe change the idea of what you needed to do to find success immediately, not having that long runway to go and chase that big picture that you want?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, even going back to my first job with the Sounders, coming in their expansion year and honestly getting thrown into arguably one of the best organizations in the MLS. We win 3 Open Cups, a Supporter Shield. The late Ziggy Schmidt was a great example of being able to develop a winner. And so, what I've thrived for, and this comes from, childhood and being around, my family and good people, is that I've always been wanting to learn and wanting to improve. And so again, even though, on paper, this is my first year as a head coach, I think that all the experiences that I've had in my previous job have really put me in a position to, lead a club and lead a group of men towards a common goal. And, there's some experiences, like I always look at my first coaching job as a U11 boys B team was arguably one of my best experiences ever, because I had to learn how to manage parents, playing time, putting sessions together, being out in pissing rain in Seattle, cold, dark evenings. Like, is this really what I want to do? And you just go on this journey. And again, all my experiences, all the people I've been around, I'm so fortunate, so grateful. But it really has put me in position now to where I think the most important aspect of this year has been staying true to my values as a person, and also trusting my intuition. You're in a position where it can be very lonely as a head coach, but I think that the support system that I've created with my family, my girlfriend, some really mentors, my coaching staff, has really kind of enabled me to have balance and approach this head on, because there's definitely some days that are harder than others, but it's a process. And I think that you've seen that with our group this year.
Schmetz didn't tell you that the weather was a little bit different than San Diego State in the recruitment process, did he?
No. And I should have, spending half of my life in Seattle, you think that you get used to it, but you don't. So there's a reason why I'm in warm weather places as of recent.
Speaking with head coach Dennis Sanchez of the Las Vegas Lights in the Western Conference, currently sitting on 32 points, just underneath 901 FC, right outside the playoff line. The turnaround, I want to talk about some of the specifics in the roster, because you talked about that vision, how maybe that tweaked a little bit, right, because of that small window to work with, but still very direct in what you guys are trying to do. You have that veteran presence, right? Guys like Emra Clementa, the great Solomon Asante, certainly Fabian Garcia, who just won a title a couple years ago in San Antonio. You've got young pros 2, 3, 4 years into their careers, like a JC Ngando, one of my personal favorites, Valentin Noel, Christian Pinzon, right? Guys that give you the ability to have some experience somewhere. But then you also have tackled some very interesting young players, and that's where I want to hone in on right now. You guys have been very direct about the fact that you are not afraid, and you are actually quite interested in going to get some of these pieces that, because of the changes in the draft process for MLS Super Draft, these young players have the ability to come out a little bit sooner. Let's use Sean Smart as an example. Covered his entire college career. Towards the end of it, his national championship run with Mike Noonan at Clemson, his stock was at an all-time high. A ton of MLS teams talking about him, but you guys slay the dragon. You're the ones that go and get him. Kind of define the process for me about attacking some of these younger players to harness that ability, especially because they're a little bit younger. So you're not getting 22-year-olds. You're looking at 18, 19, 20-year-olds and the ability to morph them into pros for the future.
Yeah, I think, through my experience working in development, and specifically with high potential players, one of the most important aspects that I've come across is having mentors and older experienced players around them. So for instance, if we put together a team of 18 to 22-year-olds, I think that we would go through different types of, adversity and different things that then may be having this balance. And so, going back to how we constructed this roster, Solo, Charlie Adams, Emra, Joe Zhao, these types of individuals for me were paramount with not only helping me in my first year as a head coach and managing the locker room, but then also really establishing the standard and the values and the culture that we wanted to for the young players. Now, with that, having served in youth sector for quite a period of time, I've always been a believer that if you're good enough, you're old enough. And so I've always been naturally attracted to players with upside that, you can say that you're a part of their journey, understanding kind of when to challenge them, when to put your arm around their shoulder, all these just little intricacies that it really takes. There's no blueprint for developing a young player, which is the beauty of development, that it can happen in a lot of different ways. And so, for us, like, you start looking at some of these guys that honestly just needed an opportunity to take another step in their career. Specifically Valentin Noel, having spent last year with him at Austin, very well aware of, the IQ, the different positions that he can play, fitting in from a tactical standpoint. I mean, I watched him train with the first team all last year, and I believe that if he has a green card, he's probably on the first team, at Austin right now. And then you look at a guy like JC, or even recently with Ousmane Jabang and Grayson Duty, that, the MLS has grown a tremendous amount. And, sometimes these guys just need games on their belt and to have these experiences. And then, specifically with Sean Smart, I think that, he's a guy that I watched last year at Clemson. We've had a few players that I've worked with over the past that have gone to Clemson. Great program. I think they develop winners, not only good players, but they develop winners. And so, I have a good relationship with his agent when his name was kind of brought about, watch him in more depth. And then honestly, it was the conversation with him. The guy is a winner. Like, he has this like dog approach that, whether it's a 5v2, 6v6, or a game, he's going to, give everything that he has, and he has this winning spirit to him. So, can you, looking at the beginning of the year, can you say that, he would have the success that he's had this year? I think it's TBD, but his mentality has really propelled him. And so, I think that, again, with what we're trying to achieve as a club, if you look at, also the history of what's happened recently with, a guy like Fidel Barajas, who, I worked with in Sacramento, that was brought to Charleston. There's no doubt there's a unique path that players can take, going through the USL, making sure that the clubs are on the same page. And I think where I am and where our club's at, we understand where we are in the ecosystem as well. In football, and we want players that they can use this as the next step in their journey. And my goal is to help Sean and others get to a higher level in the future.
You talked about that mentality, and I want to stick with the youth here for a second. I'm fascinated by the way you guys have been able to incorporate it into the system and immediately finding success within it. Your experience abroad, albeit removed a couple of years from the English system with Everton. You're walking alone, by the way, Liverpool fan over here. So anyway, but your experience, though, within that system, one of the things that I always heard about youth players in the American country compared to the English country, the Americans and their ability to compete, that dog mentality, the winning ways, and then certainly from a coaching standpoint, the technical aspect, as they got older, that gap, the separation started to grow between Europe, England, and the United States. In your opinion, what do you think is the biggest gap between the two?
I think, one, we've evolved a tremendous amount over the last decade as a country. I think when MLS academies, and I hope that USL will eventually move in this direction, when they became fully funded, they started going into a whole new demographic that probably prevented a lot of underprivileged kids opportunities to play at a high level. So now, really across all MLS academies, you can come in, as a talented 10, 11, 12-year-old and have your entire soccer career and development paid for. And I think with that, there's been a huge push in coaching education and how we can put more better coaches out there to really help in the development of players. And, if you look at American players, even when I was growing up, mentality was always there. Athleticism was always there. I think in a lot of ways we had to kind of organically grow ourselves just because, maybe there just wasn't enough, I want to say quality coaches out there, but we need to start to increase the quality of education, especially at younger ages. And there's always this conversation about, winning versus development. I think that they go hand in hand. I'm a huge believer that if you teach players the right way, and the right way is very open, there's a lot of ways to get from point A to point B, but to teach the players how to play football at a high level, you're ultimately going to develop, players that can adapt to different systems, that can really play at a higher level. So I still think that there's a bit of a gap in that. And the other piece too, I think that we've done a much better job of is really giving young players opportunities. Now it's not uncommon in the US to, have 15, 16, 17-year-olds be in first team environments, training on a regular basis. And where, again, if I look back in my past, when you're 16, 17, 18, you're playing in high school, you're only playing really against your age level, where now we can really accelerate the growth of young players if warranted, at 15, 16, 17, 18.
Dennis Sanchez joining us. He's the head coach at Las Vegas Lights. You guys are tied for fourth right now, which would be a home playoff game, which in Las Vegas's history is frankly unfathomable. What is success this year? Now that you've gotten to this mid-August point, you're on 11 games unbeaten, you're tied for a home playoff spot. Like, if you start to raise your eye a little bit at how you decide success this year?
It's a great question. I think that, part is as our group evolves is we have to continue to raise the bar. And I think that, again, going back to square one, one of the things that we wanted to do was re-identify ourselves with the community, with our supporters, and start to, really gain their trust back. And I think that's been, a process that we've been aiming for all season long. The other piece too is, we want to become a, destination club, whether that's, for players in different ages. And you can see, again, as Devon's alluding to with young players, how can we become, a new Orange County in a way where young players want to come to us because they see that we can develop them and give them not only an opportunity to develop individually, but be a part of a collective group. So I think that those are important pieces to our development as a club. And then specifically on the field, we have evolved so much as a group. And as I said to you guys before the call, part of coming in late to preseason, the first handful of games for us were very much preseason for us. We were learning on the fly. There was things that were happening in games that you're like, you can't even fault the players because we hadn't even had a chance to really, work on that as a group. And so what I've learned, throughout the season is, one, our collective spirit, the unity that we have on and off the field is really what can make us special. Yes, we have quality people, quality players, but there is a unique collectiveness that we have. The other piece too that I like is that we've shown a resilient spirit throughout the season. Whether it's, again, from the club evolving both on and off the field and having patience with that, to, coming back in games, to, just these different things and different ways that we've dealt with adversity. And so it's really positioned us in a way right now where we've started a little bit of this campaign of like, why not us? You see, Phoenix is a great example of last year of a team that comes in, gets hot at the right time. It's the beauty of American sports that, when you make playoffs, anything can happen. And so there's very much this balance of, we have full belief that we can compete with anybody on the day, but at the same time, maintaining, humility, working hard, focusing one game at a time, and understanding that we have to earn the right to win every time we step on the field.
Dennis Sanchez joining us. You're going to be at this for a very long time, whether it's in Vegas or elsewhere. That's already become pretty readily apparent. Congratulations on all the success, and wishing you guys the best as you try and keep moving the ball along this year.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Dennis joining us, miss any part of the interview. It's available on the SiriusXM app tomorrow. It's also available later today on the USL YouTube page. Back with a look at results around the league from last week, next on USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everybody, to USL All Access. Before we go any further, congratulations to all our friends at USL Super League. It's taken like 20 months. We've had a ton of talks with Amanda Vandervoort over the last couple of years. They kick off 3 games on Peacock, which will broadcast all the games all year long. Carolina sent DC Power the first game Saturday, 7 Eastern, and then Spokane and Fort Lauderdale afterwards out on the West Coast. And then Tampa Bay Sun and Dallas Trinity kick off Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Happy trails. Really good luck with the rehab. Isaac Ankang torn ACL. he's out for the year. Hadn't played a ton for Rhode Island. Certainly wishing him the best. Dev, big game on Wednesday night because we're calling it together. That's rare. CBS SN, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. Sacramento, El Paso. Why should people watch?
Sacramento Republic, their ability to respond to adversity. They just missed the unbeaten road record by 1 game. But I take the positive out of it. I'm a glass half full type of guy, and how good they were on the attacking side of things. Struggled a little bit defensively, but that's a one-off for how regular that is under Mark Briggs. But this is going to be a hard-fought game, trying to continue to impress going forward. Again, no Russell Cicerone, no Roro Lopez, no Ricketts. They had to find a way to recreate. They did that. Incredible performance by Nick Ross. All of a sudden, Kieran Phillips really has that confidence in the final third. But if there's one thing that you can take away from Wilmer Cabrera's squads, it's being that hard-nosed, hard-hitting, fighting performances that even when they've struggled for results and just getting their first win after almost 2 months of play, they always seem to bring it. It will be a tough one for the Quails.
Dev, you learn anything from this show?
I learned that every single week there is the possibility of me coming back to play for someone because I would run through a brick wall for Dennis Sanchez, even though I can't even actually run at this point in time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know whether I learned that Dennis can or can't hit a curveball, but I know that the owner and his organization can. For Devon, Emmett, Mike, good chatting with you this Tuesday. We'll talk to you again next week. So long for now.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.